Hi, it's Carrie Ann from Lofty. Today, we're on location down in Savannah, Georgia. Our guest is Lesley Francis of Lesley Francis PR. We'll be talking about how to set a foundation for your business, creating a disciplined plan, and how to find balance and give back to yourself. Thank you again for being my guest today.
My pleasure.
Guest number 3, here we go. We're down in Savannah, which I should mention right at the beginning. And for me, this is special to be able to come and do my first on location of this series. And we met a year ago when I was down here with the Savannah Voice Festival and sort of returning to a gig that I had long ago, and met you, Lesley, running an amazing small business in really leading PR down here in Savannah and bringing your skill set that like me, we've had in common with sort of that big corporate experience, and then transitioning that into the small business world to help other small business owners really benefit from that expertise.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for asking me. I'm delighted to be doing this with you.
Yes, great. I know, and the other thing I think that's really fun is in your role, you're typically helping clients, get in front of the camera, coaching them on what they should be saying and sort of their presence. And so I love the idea of bringing a guest that's usually sort of behind the scenes out in front of the camera.
Normally it is. If I'm in front of the camera, I'm not doing my job well because my client needs to be in front of the camera, but I will make an exception for you today.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
I love it. So I want to just jump in with some of the questions that I asked you. So
sure.
The first one, which I love this because I think so many of the people that will listen to this or view this will be people that are either sort of just starting out, thinking about starting out, might even be in business a few years, but are interested in learning from others, and especially women, who have been doing this and sort of pioneering in the world that we're in. And so, as you think back about getting started with your business, and maybe a really great piece of advice that you've received that sort of stuck with you, what is that?
Well, for me, and like you, I was in the corporate world in London. I really had 3 careers because I started off in the corporate world working for the big advertising and marketing agencies, and then I set up on my own in London, a small business the other side of the pond, and I was lucky enough to sell that in 2007 before the economic downturn, and I came over here and done it again this side of the Atlantic. So over all my years I've really learned a lot, but there is one thing, the piece of advice that I was given when I was starting out, and every year that goes by I see the truth in it more, is don't expect an overnight success, because every overnight success that you hear about has had years and years of hard work and dedication going into it. You might have just heard of somebody or they're on your radar. Think of a pop star. I mean, there's always the exception, but normally they've spent many, many years slogging away, trying to get a contract, trying to get a recording. And in the business world, it's not so very different. And I've always been rather suspicious and wary of anything that seemed too good, too fast, and too good paying, because normally it wasn't good long-term ethical business. So it's building firm foundations, being patient, have more reserves than you think you're going to need. It's great to always have reserves. Hope for the best, plan for the worst, because even if you have a good client base and you're invoicing, cash flow is vital. Cash flow is king. So always build solid foundations and just work hard and get up every day, and just know that this is not a sprint, but it's a marathon. But it's very worthwhile when you complete it, or you get comfortable and you hit your stride, I should say.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, that's great. And that resonates with me a lot, because I know, I sort of found myself in a situation where all of a sudden I was out of a job and thought, okay, I've always wanted to work for myself. Why not? Let's just jump in and try it. Yes, I have some savings, not as much as I would have liked. Yes, I have retirement accounts. I hope I don't have to tap into those. And, the thing that I've learned that's been very humbling is, even though up front I had some initial success, when you talk about the foundation and the cash flow, that's something I really had to learn and adjust to, right? Because when you come from the world of stability financially with a job where someone else is paying you and you get that paycheck every 2 weeks,
Exactly.
you build your life around that.
Absolutely.
And then, it changes.
It does. And it isn't just what's coming in, it's overheads. And think about from very early on, absolutely, don't expect to pull a great salary out of your business in year one. And yeah, you might have to think about, do I really need to buy that coffee, or shall I just make it in the office or make it at home? But further down, do you need that fancy office? Do you really need that extra assistant? Could you have them on a 1099 or part-time basis? Because that's what will eat your profits, and that is something that you really have to plan for. So I also feel very strongly that when I bring somebody into my business, when I'm offering them a career, when they are ready to commit to me and my brand and my vision and my clients, that I want to be able to reward them appropriately. So I don't want to be stretched too thin so that I can't give them the rewards that they deserve as they grow and prosper with me.
Yeah, that's another really good point, because I think it's easy as you get into it and you start to see some cash flow coming in. You might even, for me, it's like I sort of have my checklist of where I want that to go, but it's also very easy to think, okay, I could just do that now, or maybe I ought to just try to bring that person on, and being able to take a step back and sort of say, okay, even though maybe I'm very excited about this initial success I'm seeing, I need to go back to sort of that foundational plan and make sure that my business can actually afford this.
Absolutely, and in the long term, because you can still bring people on short-term contracts, part-time contracts, 1099 contracts. There are other ways of employing now, and there are a lot of people out there, working mothers, people that are perhaps retired from a big corporate job, but they still want to use their brain. Maybe they don't want to work 80 hours a week, but they might want to work 20 to 30, and they're very talented. There are people like that, people who are doing a master's degree, but perhaps have some time to work in a specialism like website design or writing. There are people like that. So you don't have to do everything yourself, and you can grow, but that's very different to taking on somebody on a full-time salary. There's going to be the question about benefits, and those, then you are taking responsibility for other people.
Right.
And other people's lives and income.
Right.
And I always take that really seriously. So building those solid foundations step by step, not going too fast, too soon, but balancing that with bringing in the resources you need. Because there are times, okay, yes, I really do need a new laptop because I'm bringing on this assistant. That would be short-termism, and that's not a monthly charge. That's okay, that's a capital expenditure. Yes, I have that in my cash flow, that makes sense, but that might be a better investment than putting a full-time assistant on when perhaps you only needed somebody part-time, or an intern and a freelancer. So it's just looking at that and making sure that you can cover your overheads and there's a little bit in reserve.
That, and what I'm hearing too is that maybe taking the time to think about, what are the potential options to solve this problem? So I have a need, or there's opportunity now, and before I just sort of pull the trigger on kind of maybe the initial gut reaction, stopping and asking yourself, are there other ways I could solve that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Perhaps not signing an office lease, perhaps using a hot desking, or is there another professional or a company in your town where perhaps you could pay them a small amount to just use their meeting room and have a hot desk once in a while? There were all sorts of creative solutions, and for me it was very humbling when I came to the US, having had a big staff of 20 people in London, and I sold that and I left, and then when I came over here and it was just me, and I was doing everything. I mean, I was getting the mail, I was delivering posters, I was doing everything. I was buying the coffee for the office. And it's not that I'm above that, but it's actually quite humbling, because it brings you back to what you need to make that business successful. But really, it's solid foundations and always being ethical. Don't be short term. Some money and some clients aren't worth having, you know, and if your gut tells you it's not right and it doesn't smell good, it probably doesn't.
Right.
So reputation is all.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really, really good point.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, okay, that kind of leads me to the next question. You know, when you were starting out, and sort of as you mentioned, you've sort of done this twice. How did you find clients? How did that work? And were there different strategies that you used? Did you make things up?
No, it's that's the $1 million question. And you know, I've obviously thought about this a lot and thinking about our discussion today. And really, I have always put out good karma because I believe it will come back to you. And what does that mean? Well, that sounds very Zen, but work hard, but get involved, volunteer, join boards, volunteer to handle, I mean, my field is publicity, so volunteer to help worthy non-profits or cultural organizations to raise their profile, because you know what, you'll get noticed and wow, she really knows what she's doing. And then you're asked to do it for businesses, you're asked to do it on a paid basis. So that is something, particularly second time around, I think in today's culture, that's even more important than it was back when I did this the first time in the UK. Obviously you do all the classic marketing, you join the suitable organizations, the chamber, you network, you make sure that you are seen at the right events, you have a professional business card, you have a professional image, your website is clear, professional, effective, any social media presence, LinkedIn presence is appropriate. So obviously you have to do the basics, but then it's always still about people and connecting with people. And for me, I have found just by volunteering and putting out good, I've been in Rotary, I've served on the boards of many non-profits, you actually meet people who then will want to give you business. I mean, that sounds simplistic, but that's something that that I have found over the years to really pay dividends and get to know people, because at the end of the day, particularly in today's society, I mean, it's quite impersonal in many ways. You know, we're all behind screens and it's on smartphones. That human connection, like we're doing today, sitting and talking to each other, that can be worth thousands of emails just in terms of the connection. And the same is true with clients and potential clients. I offer to just, let's meet, let's spend an hour together, tell me about your business, I'll tell you about what services we offer, and you know, maybe there's something we can do together. And sometimes, I mean, I've signed clients that I first met and discussed working with 3, 4, 5 years ago, but then there comes a time when they're ready, or you now have the services that they want. So invest that time and be proud of your business and your abilities. You are the best ambassador for your business and what you can offer.
Yeah, that's great. And also, you know, this piece you just said at the end about some of those clients that you would meet in that time when you're sort of drumming up the business might not actually become a client for many years.
Exactly.
And I mean, I know that's something for me that I've been sort of questioning, right? I've been out hustling and networking, and then there's times where I just will feel a little discouraged thinking, okay, I don't understand. I just had all those meetings. They seemed very interested. They even asked for a proposal. They said, the pricing looks right. And now we're just sort of following the lead. And I had another kind of colleague say to me, you know, maybe those are going to be the clients 2 years from now.
Yes, very much
you know?
so. I always joke that clients are a little bit like buses. You don't get any for a long time, then 3 come along at once. and it's a little bit like that. I've always found that. But again, some of those clients may be people that I spoke to originally months or even years ago, because, or you may not get anything with that client because something changes in their business, or they move on, or they have to wait for a new financial year. But in the meantime, they recommend you to their neighbor, the person they play tennis with, and you get a referral then. So it can be disheartening, but you just have to keep plugging away. It's a numbers game. Obviously, don't waste your time on ludicrous opportunities, but anything that seems like a reasonable business opportunity, it's always worth putting your best foot forward and showing what you can do. But we've all felt that. We've all felt, why? I'm doing this, I'm getting all this positive feedback. Why you're not signing contracts? Which brings me back to the solid foundations and not overstretching. Because there will be, especially in the early years, what I call feast or famine. And it's very hard to balance, especially if there's only you or you and a part-timer or whatever it might be, to have enough resource to deal with those times of feast, but then to be able to survive comfortably through the famine.
Right.
And you know, it's the balancing act, and that's where many businesses go under, because they just somehow that ratio just doesn't quite work out. But again, be patient and keep doing it, and also don't take it personally.
Yeah.
That's the other thing. I think as women in business, we tend to say, is it me? What have I
Right.
done wrong?
Right.
Why am I not good enough? It's not usually about you at all. It's usually because they don't have the budget, or it's not a priority, or their boss has said no, or frankly, they don't see it as urgent, and something comes up and they have to deal with some urgent business thing, someone leaves, or they have a new contract, and the branding, the marketing, which is the field you and I are both in, the PR, oh, that can wait.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's just nothing that you can control. But keep in touch, but don't stalk. That's the other thing. There's that balance between keeping in touch with them, dropping them an e-newsletter, sending a Christmas card or an e-card. You know, just there are certain things you can do to keep in touch. Go to the networking events and say hi, but don't immediately go, did you get my proposal?
Right.
You know, hi, how are you? How's business? How's your wife, daughter, dog?
Right.
You know, just be patient. And sometimes I have technically closed a file. I said, well, that's never going to come to anything. And I put it in my dead pictures. And then suddenly I'll get a call or an email 3 months later. I'm like, well, I never saw that coming. So
Right.
it's, yeah.
And that's sort of the karma piece too, I think, that you were mentioning, right?
Yes,
It's sort
very
of
much.
you're putting it out there, you're putting out that good intention, you're making that human connection with them, and that when the time is right, it will come back either from that person or through somebody that they've, you know, they had such a good experience with you, they think, oh, I know just the person that might be able to help.
Exactly, and it's not right for them at that time, or it's not in their budget or whatever, or their boss says no because their boss wants to spend it on TV advertising or something. And yeah, but it does. If you just put good quality, ethical business practice out in the world, I really believe that ultimately it does come back.
Yeah, I love that. And that gives me hope.
Well, you know, the second year is often the hardest, I think.
Yeah.
Because the first year it's enthusiastic. You often get what I call the low-hanging fruit. Your contacts, the people you might have known from your corporate life, not poaching, but just that you've met.
Right.
Or the people who are like, oh wow, I could really use that service. But it's that second wave that sometimes can be a little bit harder to just solidify.
Yeah, I've heard that this year. That it was called, oh, Carrie Ann, you're in the valley of death, and that was, you know, literally where I was in year 2. But you know, if you can hang out,
Yes.
and you can, again, kind of go back to you said, the foundation,
Yes.
you know, continue to work on the networking, making it to year 3 really can be where then things can start to turn.
That's right. And you know, the other thing to do during that period as well is, if you're not necessarily really busy with a paid client project, is to say, okay, well, maybe I'll go volunteer on this board. Know so I might meet, or I'm going to make a point of networking, or I'm going to go to that seminar. And I don't mean spending a fortune on, you know, let's do these great $1,000 training courses. I'm talking about going to a chamber networking event for a few dollars, or you know, this sort of thing. And that's something that, use your time productively. Look at your website. Is there a way to update it? Is there a way to get testimonials on there? Look at doing some e-marketing. Look at your social media profile. Use that time to take care of some of your own image and branding.
Right.
That you will then encourage clients to come to you.
Yeah, I think that's really smart. I mean, to use that time for your advantage. And you know, kind of with that in mind, what's changed for you over the years since you started?
Well, I've been in this some time, 3 decades.
It's amazing.
I know.
That makes me really inspired.
Oh, well, it makes me feel ancient. But you know, I was straight out of college into this, and I've been doing this for 3 decades. So I still love it, though. I still get excited when I get out of bed in the morning. But I think for me, there has certainly been huge changes in that time, particularly in terms of technology and how we communicate. I mean, I'm so old that we used to do fax machines, and we used to rely on the Royal Mail, as it was in England, or the USPS here. And now it's all email, and it's instant, and we all have smartphones, and that's great. But you know, those are only tools. The thing that hasn't changed is that personal connection. How can my business solve a problem, tackle an issue, or make your business or brand or service perform better? That hasn't changed. That was the same in 1990 as it is in 2018, and I'm sure beyond.
Yeah.
And just really making it real and having that connection.
Right.
So yes, use the tools of GoToMeeting, obviously online, of course emails, but still sometimes as well I say to my staff, you know, email's great, but just pick up the phone or take the time to have a coffee. But even if you're in different states or continents, you can still pick up the phone.
Right.
You can still have a conversation because there is so much more, like we're talking now, there's so much more than you communicate by having that conversation than you do with just having an online dialogue. So ultimately it's that people and people's needs and businesses, services, promoting those, but having that connection, understanding your client and what they need has never changed in all these years.
Yeah. And I think, you know, the other thing that's really special about that piece of advice that I'm sure you see even above and beyond being in PR and helping people, you know, propel forward their story. And I know I see that from the brand strategy side, is that it really is the human piece that is constant. So yes, it's important in any business to stay up, especially as you think about putting yourself out there, you know, with technology, with the platforms that make sense for you, not only from a marketing perspective or within your industry, but that the reality is, you know, that human connection is the thing that will never change.
Absolutely, and that brings me back to network, get to know people, and also remember, I mean, I'm doing a lot of talking today, which is unusual, but you know, it's one of these and two of these. Listen, you know, listen to what your client needs, because they are the experts in their field, in their profession, in their business. Sure, we're the experts in public relations, in branding and marketing, but they understand their businesses and the issues, the challenges, the opportunities. So listen to that. And it's very interesting what you said, being in public relations. So obviously newsprint is struggling, it's not what it was, but we read a lot of our news online or we download a broadcast. But if you look at news stories or if you look at business stories, there's always something in there that makes us read or listen, and that's the human element. So even if it talks about something happening with a huge multinational, they will quote the CEO. They will ideally quote a customer or somebody that's been affected by whatever they're announcing, whether that's a good news or a bad news. So we may be reading it in our computer age on a screen, but the story is still in there. We're still quoting people. We're still talking about how the business has affected people's lives. That hasn't changed, and I don't think it will.
Yeah. Yeah, that's powerful, you know, to keep that in mind.
And always remember that, you know, because it is still personal, even though we're in many ways a depersonalized world.
Right.
And those are great tools, but they're not the master.
Yeah.
The tools are different, but the fundamentals of what we're trying to achieve are the same.
Right. Yeah. Okay, I love that. So then I always like to ask, this is my favorite questions, is what is your superpower? Tell us.
Okay, my secret. I am ridiculously organized, a list maker, and frankly a bit of a control freak.
Type A is what
there
I'm
you
hearing.
go.
If we had to categorize.
You can categorize me that way. Yeah, it's really just the way I've always rolled. And when, you know, whether that list is on a bit of paper or on my iPhone, you know, it's still the same. Just to be organized. And every day I plan my day out, the calls I need to make. Of course, things will change. You know, meetings will take longer. You'll get stuck in traffic. Someone will run late. Whatever. But you can still have a plan.
Right.
I also try to do something off the not urgent but important list every day, because we all have, you know, there's the quadrant of what's urgent and important, what's important but not urgent, what's urgent but not important, and what's not important and not urgent. Have you heard of that? The quadrants. So,
yeah, okay.
Obviously we're all really focused on that urgent and important list. And then there's things we might need to do, like, well, I suppose it is important, but really we want to pay our electricity, bill on time, because otherwise we'll get fined, but we're not going to get cut off. But then there are things that are strategic. There are things like the networking, or just thinking about your business plan. And I'm not saying you sit down one afternoon and do all of it, but every day try and do something that's important to your business. Even if it's just having a thought, sending one email out to an old contact, posting something on LinkedIn, writing a blog about an issue you're passionate about, arranging to have coffee with an important contact. It may not be urgent because you might not be needing that person, that story, that contact then, but do something that will build your business every day. Try to do that. And if I don't, I make a point of doing 2 things the next day. And it can be something as simple as a quick phone call or a quick email.
Yeah. Well, I think that's great, and I think that kind of goes back to even the first thing you were saying, building the foundation. It's about not only the plan, but the habits that you put in place, right?
Very much so, and the disciplines.
Right, the disciplines. And it seems, and I know, there's lots of different types of, I'm kind of fit in between. I'm kind of part type A, part that creative, abstract, random brain will come in, and those can serve you well. But, I think that's where I find it fascinating to learn from other business owners and learning about, what's authentically you and how have you owned that to really make your business successful, and what can I see in, someone like you where, okay, I'm maybe not going to ever be, quite as organized as much as maybe I would like to be, but I can see, okay, these things are the habits and the patterns that Lesley puts in place, and that has brought her success, over decades of having a business, which, frankly, that's what, like I said, it does. It inspires me quite a bit, because it's so exciting to move from working for the CEO to becoming the CEO, but it's an entirely new learning curve, right? So I love that idea of sort of that laying the foundation, finding the habits that are going to work for you, being disciplined about, and even like you said, giving yourself a little leeway. So if it's a day that's really busy and you need to take that time for you at the end of the day to know that's all right. Tomorrow's a new day. I'm going to commit the time to do, 2 small things tomorrow.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think as well, if I may say, as a woman, and because I started out 30 years ago, it was harder then. There was more of a glass ceiling.
Yes.
And I would say and I'm proud to have been able to run my own companies and to employ and mentor other women. I think women are really hard on themselves generally. And that's something I would say to any woman wanting to run their own business is, don't beat yourself up. We're all human. And yes, I have my aims and my lists and all the rest of it, but that's not the whole story. We all have bad days, or we all have days where something doesn't quite go right, or you don't have to beat yourself up too much. Obviously be professional, do the best you can do, and then tomorrow is another day. And we tend to set very high standards for ourselves, and I would say, don't be your own worst critic. There are plenty of other people out there that can do that for you, and cheerlead other women in business, whether they are employees, your co-workers, people that you can refer to. There really is room for all of us, and I've seen a lot of really successful women being brought down by their own self-doubt and fears, and keep that private, keep that to a few trusted people. I've confided a lot to my dogs over the years.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Before my husband had to listen to all this, or really close friends. You don't have to make it public in the office. Just remember that you don't need to be intimidated, that we're all human and you can do it. And go for it, girl, is what I would say.
I love that. Go for it, girl. That's awesome. So, okay, one last super bonus question. In the last month, is there a book, a podcast, some article that you've read, anything that's just sort of, been forwarded to you that you've thought, that's really interesting, that's something worth sharing?
Actually, yes. It was an article, and forgive me, I can't remember where it was published. Someone forwarded it to me. And it was about the fact that all the baby boomers are retiring, and Generation X, which is me, we're becoming the establishment, I guess the older ones. And then there's the millennials, But there's the mature millennial, then there's the brand new millennials coming into the workplace, and the attitudes and motivations of these different groups of people. And of course it was generalizing, but being in PR, how to appeal to those different market segments. And I found that really interesting, and not just as a marketing, but in terms of employing. I mean, and there was actually statistics. I'll give you one thing that stood out to me. So for employing a millennial, a 20-something, there's actually something more important than money and prestige, and it's flexibility and control. And actually they put a lot of value on being able to have some autonomy and not having to necessarily always clock in at 9 till 5 like we did back in my day, which makes me sound 100, I know, but you know, but getting the work done, because I mean there is remote working, obviously,
right.
And there is we all have lives and things to juggle, but actually to millennials, apparently, according to this data, and I thought, you know, I've seen that and I recognize that, and even in the way we market things and the language we use. So that was something that was just forwarded to me last week that I thought, I need to be more aware of that in my campaigns and in my employee relations.
Right.
Because, you know, I employ an administrator who is a baby boomer who's just got a part-time job through to a new graduate, and their motivations, and not just where they are in their lives, obviously, but what motivates them, their values, their addiction to electronic devices.
Right.
It's all different. So that's something that jumped out at me.
I love that. That's great.
So,
well, thank you so much
pleasure
for your time. This is amazing. I'm excited. I'm excited about, you know, again, sort of the takeaways that I have is everything from, you know, thinking about the foundation of where you're going and building that from the beginning, knowing that it's going to be a process, that you need to have resources financially available to you because you're going to be having ebbs and flows of business, to, you know, thinking about getting new clients, and that again is a process and is going to take discipline and time. But that to be open and to have those human connections and to continue to do that and cultivate that practice for yourself. And that, you know, just in general, those sort of two things, the plan, the discipline, and being open to knowing that you're going to learn along the way, and being a cheerleader for yourself, because there's going to be times that things don't go as you plan, and that's okay.
It's fine.
Yeah.
And, you know, I would say as well, just think about as well a time of life. It's not the time to take on a big mortgage when you're starting your own business. So do you have somebody, whether that's a life partner or a flatmate, that can help you cover expenses? Don't overcommit or overstress in other parts of your life if you possibly can, certainly financially, when you're starting a new business. So it's thinking outside just the business. Think holistically about what's going on in your life, both financially and in terms of your time and attention as well.
That's great. Okay, I love that. That's excellent. Thank you again.
Thank you. Pleasure.
Okay. All right. Okay.